Okay, guys, I would like to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. We have got Bobby Shue with us tonight. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very well, thank you, man. I said to you before we start recording, we've got a red weather warning in my area today. So I'm hoping we don't have any problems with the signal, but it should be okay. It's a bit of rain. That's all it is, really. Some wind. But yeah, man, at the moment, everything seems to be working okay.
Yeah. I like your podcast, by the way, too. So
Oh,
I got
thank
the,
you very much, man. Thank you.
yeah, I think I listened to about 8 episodes
Oh,
worth. Yeah.
cool. No, thanks very
Yeah.
much, man. I'm excited to have you on the show. You've got a podcast. Can you tell us a bit about your podcast and what got you into it?
Well, we just ended the third season. The last episode posted last night. It was season 3, Mystic Talks Countdown to Halloween, back-to-back episodes, Monday through Friday, total of 22 episodes we put to bed. And I pulled that season. I don't know if we can cuss on here, but
Yeah, that's
we
fine, man. Yeah, you can
oh,
say what
okay.
you like.
I was just gonna say I kind of pulled that one out of my ass because when I first initially started the podcast, it was um it ended probably somewhere in the beginning of October. It started in the summer, the first season, and then ended in October. And then that was when I had the idea. I was like, wow, I wish I had did something to celebrate the Halloween, festivities. And so when I started season 2, I realized that it ended around August. And so around midway to the end of August. And so I said to myself, I'm just going to do it. And I almost committed to doing a total of 31 episodes, like back to back, almost. And then I said, I'm always one of those that push myself to the limit. And I said, you gotta pull it back. Just do Monday through Friday. And because I recorded maybe like the last week and a half while the first week was running. So
Wow.
uh, I got it all done under a landslide, thinking that I had more time than I actually thought. But yeah, I managed to pull it off. And
Fair play,
the
man.
yeah, I won't do that again. But the the season's over. Mystic Talk started simply from it's you got to go back to. I was always an inspiring artist, just as far as a child actor. I've done soaps and
Oh,
I've done
wow.
a lot of television commercial work as a kid, and then all the way into my young adult years living in New York. And um, got homesick, and after university, I moved back home to Texas, which is where I live in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And I got involved with. I was actually about to move to Chicago, and that was when I met my ex of 8 years. And so we were together. We were together for 8, and towards the end, I had my own business for about a year and a half of that. Wanted to buy a home right after we split, and I found out that being a business owner, it was a lot harder um, to get a home. And I had over a year's worth of savings, but I knew that that would deplete my savings by putting down what I needed to come up with being self-employed in order to own a home. So I felt myself in kind of this crossroad, and my ex and I were just separating things, and I'm crashing on a couch at my mom's house at 32 years old. Um, I mean, feeling like a deadbeat, and I thought I could go over there and collect the rest of my things without feeling some kind of emotion towards it. And I'm telling you this story because this is what all started my spiritual journey, which eventually led to the podcast. And um, when I went into that apartment that we once shared, the things that I took away were then replaced with something else. It was during the holiday season, so emotions were high. Um, I honestly thought I could go in there and handle it. And then when I got out of there, I was walking back to my little Honda Civic, and I just started crying and bawling. And I said, and it wasn't so much that it ended, but just his life stayed intact while mine was kind of up in limbo. And It was the first time in a long time because I kind of identified as an agnostic. I went back and forth from identifying as an agnostic to an atheist. I did grow up Southern Baptist, so um, and being gay, that kind of pushed me away from even, because I tried the whole praying the gay away, and it kind of made me, kind of rebel. I didn't want, just I guess you could say I resented God, because it's like you're not doing anything to help me. So I just kind of shut him out. And for years, I denied God. I'm not trying to preach on here, but I'm a Christian,
Yeah,
um,
man.
but a born again. But I don't preach, and I'm not the Orthodox Christian type because I do believe in UFOs and
Same here, man. I'm with you.
yeah, and spirits and all that, and I kind of believe a little bit more. I know if I'm going off on a tangent, but I kind of believe a little bit, or I should say, I'm a little more open-minded into stories that I never really put a lot of thought into, like Bigfoot and flat Earth. But after shit got really weird around 2020, I'm like, anything could be real.
100%, man. 100%.
Yeah. And
In
then,
fact,
um,
normal stuff feels more strange than the
yeah,
conspiracy stuff now.
I mean, it does. And when people come out with some of these shadow government conspiracy ideas or thoughts, I'm like, well, that might be a possibility.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna rule it out.
yeah,
Had you asked me this anytime before 2020, I would have thought everything was sunshines and flowers and all that. Like, yeah. I mean, I know there's some corruption, but it can't be that bad.
yeah. I was
I
the
just
same,
would not.
man. I was the same.
Yeah, and
20,
then
2020 was the real eye opener for
yeah,
me as well.
and shamefully enough, I was a diehard liberal with socialist ideas. You couldn't tell me shit, getting real combative, and that was also part of the podcast, going through this spiritual awakening and realizing that, why are you wasting all your good energy just being mad all the time? Like, it, even though these people may not agree, because I was scared to come out and say, I don't believe the same way. I actually am a proud patriot. Um, I kind of I still identify as an independent, but I've moved over more on the Republican side of things. Especially after studying history, I learned that there's so much more that I don't know, and I was so ignorant of that before. Because I bought into this narrative, this ideology that you know U.S. is bad, and they're out to get us. They're going to eat their own, and it's simply not true. It's just one particular group, and that's the liberal party. And so I can't stand for that ideology, and I don't believe in manipulating people um, and just they're trying to divide everybody because it's all about divide and conquer.
Yeah,
And I just
100%,
wish
man.
I just wish people would get that through their head that we have more power than they do, and we need to stop really all beliefs aside. I don't care what you believe, but we can at least respect one another.
Yeah,
Um, I've learned a lot through this podcast and my journey of spirituality that, I you can hate me all you want, but guess what? I'm gonna love you back in return. I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not gonna If that's your truth, then so be it. But I'm not gonna allow you to waste my good energy and allow me to treat people disrespectfully, even if you're treating me with disrespect. I mean, we can have a difference in opinion. I can respect yours, but misery loves company at the end of the day. And I just
yeah,
and knowing that, I'm not going to allow that to push me over the edge. And I don't watch the news. And I got off of social media for over a year when I went through my DUI, which was where my spiritual awakening occurred. But my first because I kind of went off on a tangent, but my first realization to this spirituality was when I walked back to my Honda after going up to my ex's apartment. I got into the vehicle and I just started crying. And the minute I started crying, it just started pouring down rain. And it was during the holidays. And I cried to God. I said, God, please, I don't know what direction to turn, if I should look for a new job, if I should, or what I should do. You need to help me. I don't know what to do. And I'll be damned if I'm going to stay in an apartment with my mom, sleeping on the couch. I need to do something. And I had actually applied for a job while I was with my ex that I got denied twice, got interviewed once, and then someone that worked within the company referred me. But that same individual, I don't know why he didn't like me, but I did a impeccable interview. I know I did. And I knew when I walked away from that interview that I had that job in the bag, only to find out a week later I didn't get it. And you think, why me? And so speed up to a whole year later, an entire year later, I'm in that Honda. I cry out to God. Literally the next day, I go to my studio space that I was renting in downtown Dallas. I'm waiting for an appointment. And while I'm waiting there, just out of boredom, I don't even know what compelled me. I checked this old email account of mine that I hadn't checked in over a year. I was just bored. And I don't know what compelled me out of boredom to go look into this email. But when I did, there was an email that was sent that day, that morning, from that same company that denied me twice for an even better, higher paying position.
Wow.
And I took that as a sign, like it hit me instantly. And I looked up and I go, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I
Wow.
mean, I knew. Um, so that really brought my faith back into believing again, because anytime I denied God, I felt alone. I literally felt this sense of loneliness and all I'm going to say is I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but I think it's very valuable and vital to oneself to believe in something, just to believe in something higher, that's good. And so I got that job. And then now speed up, like probably a couple years into the job, I meet my now partner. We had just moved in together. I was a big drinker. I was a functioning alcoholic. My drink of choice was wine. And as we all know, winos don't like to call themselves alcoholics. They're just
Yeah.
simply winos.
Yeah.
So uh, I would I would drink a good, Malbec, and I would chug away at least 2 bottles a night.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I went to AA, there were people that were far worse than me. So I felt good about myself when I went to those meetings. I was like, wow, these people were talking about drinking in the morning, noon, and night. And, I mean, I was a functioning alcoholic. I mean, I only thought about drinking once I was off of work and in the comfort of my own home. I didn't go out to drink. It was just in my home. But, you know, when I got in that accident, I'm just going to say this, and then I'm going to go into some of the other things that I had happened to me as a child. But, my relationship with my dad was strained due to my stepmother, because I think my stepmother was trying to push me and my sister out, and it all started because they went out on um, a boating venture for Father's Day, but they did not invite me or my sister. But it was my dad, my stepmother, and my stepbrother, his wife, and 2 kids. And so I felt some kind of way about it, and I reacted. Of course, I did have some wine in my system when I reacted, and so I sent her a nasty text, which we haven't talked since. I mean, we tried, but we never were able to recapture that relationship again. My sister ended up marrying a woman twice her age, and I told her how I felt about her, which, I wasn't disrespectful about it, but I said, I just think you should give yourself more time, and I'll respect this woman because this is your wife, but um, I'm not the only one that feels this way. Your dad, your stepmom, your actual mom feel some type of way. She's a narcissist, but what can you do? I said, I just felt the need to tell you because that's important, to be truthful with one another. And so we didn't end on bad terms, but rest assured, I mean, we never talked again. And so We haven't talked in about, I don't know, for as long as me and my partner have been together. So for about a little over 8 years.
Oh man.
And yeah. And so I had a situation in those 2 years of working with that company that I worked for. There was a girl, a lady that worked under me, a young lady. She worked under me, but she was manipulating my boss into believing that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing because she was committing time fraud, doing all these things. These um, should have been fired, but apparently they had, you know, a little fling going on. So there wasn't really much I could do. So all of this led to my accident. Just it was so much that I couldn't deal with it. Not let alone I had just ran a marathon the day before, and so I get in my car. I looked at the clock. I still had 5 minutes before they stopped selling alcohol, thinking I can make it to the local 7-Eleven, and the arrow turns red. I mean, within a couple seconds. And I just thought I could make it. I was on the phone with my best friend at the time, and then a U-Haul hits my car, takes off the engine. And it wouldn't be until months later that I actually got to see the camera footage from the cop cam footage. It took off the entire engine. There was no engine. So had it just been a hair closer, I could have been paralyzed. I could have died. I didn't
Jeez.
realize how I didn't realize how severe it was because I honestly I walked out of there with, I mean, pretty much just burns from the airbag, and that was it. And so
Wow.
um, I did go to jail, and that was my first time ever being in trouble. And so at, I'm 34 at this point, and so I'm feeling pretty low. I'm like, okay, so my partner's probably going to break up with me. I'm going to lose my job. I've just pretty much at this point accepted it. I'm not even sad. I don't even know what to feel. But
Yeah.
I'm in the detox cell, and I said a prayer, and I said, look, Lord, I know this is going to be a long haul, but if I can get through this, because I think one of the roots of drinking for me was I was a worry ward. I was always worried. I was always that kid in school that had to be 2 steps ahead of all the other kids because if I didn't, I would fall behind. And I felt the same way when I was in the workplace. Like if I didn't stay on top of everything, if everything wasn't perfect, then I'm going to
Yeah.
fall behind. And so that was one of them. And I could have sat there and blamed my dad, my stepmother, my sister. But one thing I tell to people on my podcast is that because we also talk about being a better version of yourself. And, you know, I'm not a victim. I could sit there all day long and say it was because of my father, my stepmother, the chick at work who had it out to get me, my boss. I could have said all these things, but I made a decision to get behind that wheel, and I made a decision to drink. I own it. I'm not a victim. I can't blame anybody but myself. And so, what that taught me was I'm not going to allow people to dictate my actions. So, that's why I don't let people piss me off. I don't let, even comments on social media, because I'm only back on social media simply because I have this podcast and everything that I follow has to be positive. There can't be any politics. Um, Anytime I do decide to look up anything political is if I hear it through somebody else and I feel like it's information that I need to hear to be informed, I'll go look at it and then I get off. I don't spend too much time surfing the web. Um, if anything, I think that it's very detrimental to people's mental health, and that's why we have such a mental health crisis. Um, I just recently got a TikTok for Mystic Talk, and I was looking at some of these conspiratorial videos, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, this is why people are fucking mental. I'm like, because I'm starting to believe this shit
Yeah.
because within each 30-second clip or a minute clip, whatever it is, they make total fucking sense. Whether it's
Yeah.
true or not, I can buy it. I'm buying into it. And I said, I got to get off of here. This
Yeah.
is
And
this is toxic.
as we said earlier, anything is possible in this world at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I never bought too much into the flat earth theory, but I don't know. Some of these people make good references, and I'm
Yeah,
like, I don't know. Maybe. I
yeah,
mean, and even those who believe the Earth is round, but you have to ask yourself, have you been out there? You only know what they show you. You really don't know. You really
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, for
And
sure.
I love how people just. I'm talking. Whether you're a flat earther or you believe the Earth is round, none of us know really. We've
Yeah,
only known what we've been taught. And even if they go into the laws of physics and how this and that, I mean, just like I said, you go on TikTok, well, they can make you believe just about anything,
yeah,
So
100%.
it's
So,
not that hard
uh,
to do.
I'm not a flat earther. I'm not saying it's not. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I have talking to people that have legit made me go, do you know what? They've got a great point. But I don't know.
Now,
I'm not a flat earther. I wouldn't say I'm not a flat earther, but you know,
if you were going to ask me how much I believed in it, I would say probably 60-40. 60% I believe the earth is round,
well,
40%
that's close, man.
maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe, I don't know. And like I said, after 2020, I'm like, I don't know what's real anymore.
yeah,
So,
that's it.
um, uh, but that's literally why I stay off of the internet. I try not to listen to too much or buy into too much. But I do believe, well, I mean, prove your case. If you have a legitimate case, you can prove it. I'm not here to do that. I got you. I'm just gonna explain it to me like I'm in kindergarten. That's all.
Yeah,
Um, but with that said, I had those two instances where, I think God saved me because I had something to do here on earth. And that's really how I look at the world today. Like I said, I'm not the Orthodox Christian type. I don't believe in a lot of some of the things that traditional Christians would believe. But what I do believe is when we die, we go to heaven, nirvana, whatever you want to call it. And since we are conscious energy, I believe that we can float around the cosmos, the heavens, or what have you, for some time with, our parents or grandparents, our cousins, siblings, what have you, and then maybe we mix it up and come back all together in another life as either a friend, my mother. We believe that maybe me and my mom, because our relationship is very much like a brother and sister. So um, we have that kind of bond. So I believe that we might have very well have been brother and sister in a previous life. Now, my sister, I was a very good brother to her. I was very territorial of her. I protected her from the bullies on the playground. She used to pee on herself, so I would always be there to wipe her up, clean her whenever I would. We're 7 years apart, but I would go there in the afternoon for daycare until our, mom got off of work to come pick us up, and she would have little accidents, and I would be there to clean up her puddles. And so with that said, I don't know what it was, but she was always the only time we ever come together as brother and sister was if we were having a good time, meaning we were playing, make believe house or whatever it was, or playing Nintendo together. That was when we came together. But other than that, she wasn't very affectionate towards me when I would reach out to give her a hug or and it makes me wonder if maybe we had, you know, uh, had a past in a previous life where maybe I was very vindictive towards her, and maybe that's part of my karma is I'm paying it back by receiving this kind of negative attention from her. Who knows? But
yeah,
I believe that we're conscious energy. When we come, our body is nothing more than a pod, and then when we leave, it allows us to have this experience to walk, to see, to touch, to taste. And when we leave it, um, you know, we feel this sensation that we haven't felt in a long time. When a lot of people talk about when they have these life after death experiences, they feel this sense of calmness. They don't feel aches and pains, and that's because they're not in their physical body. And so I think once we go out into the cosmos, you think of eternity, maybe we take it for granted and we feel that we need to come back down to the earth playing field to learn more lessons. And a lot
yeah,
of people will say, why would I have picked this life? Why would I have chosen to be poor? I think it's the same reason you choose some of the movies you do. Some of us like a good tearjerker, and then after we watch it, we're like, "Why did I do this to myself?"
yeah,
And
yeah. Self punishment.
I,
Yeah,
I think that it's something that we we come here, it's a school, because I follow Dolores Cannon a lot, and she talks about, we're conscious energy and how we'll float around the cosmos. And, even certain people, there's a couple of people, I mean, without getting too into detail with this, but there's a couple of people that have intrigued me that have become long-term friends of mine. I don't know what it was about them, but I just had to know them. And we've been friends for 20 something years now. And
Oh,
so
that's cool.
I think that has something to do with knowing them in my previous life.
Yeah, it's
And
like when you meet someone for the first time, sometimes for whatever reason, you really click with someone. And you do feel like you've known them. You say, I feel like I've known you for years, man. I
yeah,
wonder if that's something to do with it.
I think it absolutely does. And I think it kind of similar to deja vu.
Yeah,
If I feel like when you watch a movie for a trailer, this is how I explain it. When deja vu is like, you get to see your life play out before you accept that role. And I think when you come down here and you kind of and you are given free will to change things up, much like a video game. Um, the outcome's always the same, but you might do something a little different. And so I think when you get that deja vu moment, it's much like a trailer to a movie. You know how when you see a trailer 50, 60 times before you commit yourself to going to go see the movie? You're like, you finally accept it and you're like, I'm going to go see it. And then you go see it. And then as you're watching it, there's all of a sudden that familiar scene in that movie. And that's from that trailer. I
yeah.
think it's something similar, unless we also get to come back and relive this life again. And I have my book that I'm going to be working on before my next season 4. It's very much about, they say with age comes wisdom. And it's about me coming back into a parallel and what I would tell my younger self, like
Interesting.
the information I have now, what I would tell my younger self in order to best serve them. And so that should probably be out in sometime in 2024. That's what I'll be working on. And then going into season 4, but been working on the book for the past 4 years. So I'm hoping I'll have it done by the end of the year. And, it's funny when you write a book, it's like, once you're done, you kind of take a look and you go, wow, I did all of this. And then it's kind of like when you clean a room in your house that has a bunch of junk in it. You start a junk pile, like, I'm going to keep this, I'm going to get rid of that. And you start a pile in the hallway, and then you clean the room and you look back and you go, wow, I did this. And then you turn around, it's kind of like, now I realize I got to go back and read all this shit, to look for typos. And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about all this. I got to go back and read this now. So it's kind of similar when you clean the house and you look out in that hallway, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this shit. And so, but to kind of going down this spiritual path, it made me reflect on some of my childhood experiences. There was one in particular when my parents were still married. My dad was a fireman. He, would be off 48 hours and he work a 24-hour shift. We lived out in the country. And so I never felt safe as a kid being out in the middle of nowhere. There were houses, but they were all spread out. And so I felt very unsafe without him at the house, because it was me, my infant sister, my mom. And so my mom had picked me up from school, and I went to a private school. So it was about 30 minutes from our house, a good 30, 40 minutes, depending on traffic. And it's dusk and we're coming back, and, we're laughing, cutting up and listening to music. And then right before we turn on the road that we live on, I get this feeling. I can't explain it, but I was scared. I was literally scared. I didn't know why I was scared, but I didn't want to go home. I was scared to death. I didn't want to go home. But, as a kid, I'm thinking, I don't know why I feel this way. I can't explain it. And so we pull up to the mailbox. Mom gets the mail. Then she pulls into the driveway. And, I'm about 6 years old, so I can hardly see over the dash, but I can see the silhouette of our vehicle with the headlights shining on the garage. And I noticed that the silhouette of the car becomes larger. And so I kind of knew then that someone's parked behind us. And mind you, it's dusk, it's getting dark, if not already. And I look behind us and there's this man that gets out of the vehicle. And I just remember my mom running back into the vehicle. And then she puts the car in reverse and drives through our lawn back onto the main road. And he chases us like a couple miles down the road. And I actually write a fictional tale of this in my book too, because it was very prevalent. And it wouldn't be until my 30s that I brought this back up. And I'm going to be 40 this month. And so it wasn't until I started the podcast that I told my mom, you remember when that guy chased us? I said, I want to tell you something. I instinctually felt something bad was going to happen. Like, I mean, I was scared as if it was already happening.
Yeah, you knew it was coming.
Yeah. And I said, I didn't know how to explain that as a kid, but when I really reflect on that, because that never left me, how did I know? I was more obsessed with the fact that I already had that feeling. How did I know before it ever happened? And so I told that to my mom, and my mom's always been a big believer. We had a family psychic that we would go to she's been in our family for now 30 years. And so, my mom's a believer in that, and she believes it was something that it was instinctual. And she, believes that maybe I was tapping into something that, that I'm not aware of. And so another situation happened where, again, my dad's at the firehouse. I don't know, maybe my dad was trying to kill us and get the life
Yeah.
insurance
I
money.
was going to say, can I ask you who that man was? Did you find out who that was that was chasing you that day?
Yeah, actually, it was a guy that lived, because we lived on this long street. It was called Bachelor Road, and it was a long country road. And there were all like pockets of houses all down these streets. And he was drunk. Come to find out, he was drunk because he was going to catch his wife with another man. He knew his wife was cheating on him. And so he was just kind of waiting near our house for her vehicle. She drove a similar vehicle. And I
Man.
believe he thought, and so, my dad threatened him, like, you come near my family again, I'll kill you myself. And so, but that was the story. But I think he was so confused by being so intoxicated that he didn't realize that we were somebody else. And so, but another similar situation, we're going to bed for the night. And when my dad was at the firehouse, I would crawl in bed with my mom because I wasn't about to sleep. It's weird. I always had a weird fear of it being nighttime and being anywhere near a window, feeling like someone on the outside could see my silhouette and maybe, I don't know, fire a gun and shoot me, or I don't know. I always had a fear of windows at night, being near a window or someone peeking in.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel, I wonder if anything of that was from my past life.
Yeah.
But we were going to sleep that night. And like I said, everything was fine. We watched some TV, ate dinner, went to bed. My sister's only a few months old at that time, so she was in her crib. And so at this time, I'm probably about 7. And I'm laying there looking at the ceiling, and I said, something doesn't feel right. And I remembered that feeling. I was scared all over again. And I was even more scared because I remembered that feeling from before. So I was like, something's about to happen. I mean, I knew that instinctually. And there was this eerie tap on the door. And also we could hear it from like an echo. One of the back windows of our house, we could hear someone tapping on it like they were trying to get in. And, it was funny. My uncle, for whatever reason, thought to call us. And so my mom picked up the phone and he headed there to, basically save the day. And our neighbor, he was a policeman, and he was off duty, but we didn't think to call him for whatever reason. I don't know. I was so young. But I remember that was one of the wildest nights. I remember they were chasing them back and forth. There was 6 men trying to break into our house that night. 6 men. And so my uncle, when he first got there, he walked the perimeter of the house and he noticed that there were footsteps. And, you know, we had a trampoline in the backyard. So those footsteps could have been me and the neighbor kids from earlier that day. Um, but we walked the perimeter with him. And there's all these between the pockets of houses, there's like these tall grassy fields. And I guess that's where they were. They were stationed somewhere in there with their vehicle. Um, and I could hear it wasn't music, it sounded like advertisements, commercials. So I guess they had the radio up loud. And I remember hearing that. I'm thinking, is that coming from our neighbor's house? And then all of a sudden, guns go off, like just guns firing in the air. And so we run back into the house, and there's this wild chase. It was a wild night, but I was just glad that there were all these men, you know, like out to, I'm talking about the good men, not the bad
Yeah,
men, but
yeah.
you know, my uncle, the neighbor got involved, the cops finally showed up. So at
Wow,
that
man.
moment, I felt that we're safe. Nothing's going to happen to us. We're safe. And so I could never understand, how did I know? I mean, I didn't know initially what was going to happen, but I knew enough. Something bad was about to
Yeah.
happen.
You got a bad
Um,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. And then I've mentioned this to Deborah, but before those two incidents, I had to have been about um, 4 or 5 years old, 4 or 5. And they, I call them night terrors, but not in the way that others um, would say, or not what you would normally think of a night terror. I mean, an actual legitimate night terror. So it happened at night, and something happened, and I don't believe it was me being half awake and half asleep. Because I physically remember waking up. I saw, and this was in an older house we lived in before the other house where we got chased and almost broken into. It was before that house. We lived in this much older home, and my bedroom was towards the back of the house. And I had this big window, and there were two like shadow figures outside the window. I wake up and they're facing each other. I mean, and they're huge. They had to have been maybe like 8 feet, 9 feet tall. I mean, and depending on where they were standing, but they were standing relatively close to the window because I could hear them clearly. And they said, one of them said something along the lines of, "Do you think he knows that we're here?" I knew that they were talking about me. I don't know word for word, but it was about me. And I woke up and saw them, and it was literally at least a couple minutes because I was just frozen in my bed until I started hearing them talk. And it was a deep, heavy voice. I jumped out of bed and went into my mom's room. Now, here's the thing. I remember, now I might be 40 years old, but I can still remember like it was yesterday, vividly. I woke up, I saw it, froze in my bed. I remember my toes curling and you know, a little bit of the body sweat because I'm trying to cover myself with the covers, the comforter, what have you. And they utter those few words, and then I just made a beeline out of that room into my parents' bed. And you know what just irked me was like, I remember yelling at them, telling them, somebody's outside my bedroom. Somebody's outside my bedroom. You need to go check. Neither one of them got up. It was like they were just dead asleep. Nobody got up. I don't know what that was about, but I remember I fell asleep that night in that room. I woke up to those shadow figures, and then the next morning I'm in their bedroom. So to me, it had to have happened.
Yeah.
And there was the second one. My dad, he wasn't yet a fireman. He was actually an overnight grocery stocker at a local grocery store. He was working an overnight, and I wake up and go to the fridge, and my mom's in her room. And there was this one room in the house, because like I said, it was an old house. There was like this oddball room off side of the kitchen. It was just rather long. I mean, it could have been like a den, a family room, a game room, or something, but I just remember it being very dark and gloomy. You could exit the front of the house from that room, and you could also exit the back of the house from that room, and you could also go to the garage from that room. And so, um, I had all those wooden panels on there. It was one of those just old, just grungy, dark rooms. I don't know. I mean, it had a bad energy vibe to it for me, and I didn't have a problem being in there with all the lights on, or being in there with someone else, but I would never be in there in the dark by myself. I just had something about that room that turned me off. I would not go in there. Uh, maybe it's just kids' intuition. I don't know, but I get up from my bed, I go to the kitchen, I open the fridge, and I hear this eerie. It almost sounded like a vacuum cleaner being turned on, but very eerie. And I'm looking in the room because that's where it's coming from, that room that was off from the kitchen. And like I said, looking in there, it's dark, it's pitch black in there. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what the hell this thing was, but it stood on its side, almost like a suitcase, like vertical, sitting up vertically. And it's made of, it looked like a saddle leather, but it wasn't a suitcase. It was like saddle leather. Um, it looked like it had, maybe, I don't know, piping around the sides of the uh, same leather. And I remember a cord. It was hooked up to something, and it just comes out of the room, and it has that sound to it like a vacuum. And it looks like it sees me because it starts coming towards me, and I take off running into my mom's room. That sound becomes so intense, and I start screaming to my mom to wake up. She won't wake up. I see that thing. It's dark in my mom's room, but there's a light out in the hallway. So that thing makes its way into my mom's bedroom, and I just black out. I just black out. And the next morning, I never had a problem sleeping in my own bed. So it was funny that next morning, once again, I'm in her room. And how did you not hear that vacuum like sound? And why didn't you wake up and turn around just to see what I was seeing? And we never discussed it, but I had brought that up as a kid, even when I was a teenager. I said, "Do you remember a time?" She has no clue. And I brought up both instances, and nobody seems to know anything. And it's always my grandma Shue. She actually lived in the house across. So it's like College Street. Our house is facing College, and then right here is Second Street. My grandmother was on the first house on Second Street. So anytime she lived there up until she had to go to a nursing home in her late 80s, early 90s. But I remember when we sold that house, got into the new house, anytime they had to drop me off and I had to be watched by my grandma Shue, I had this just eerie fascination with that house. Like, what's in there? Like, what happened? I was always, and I actually, how kids back in those days, it was easy to make friends. You just kind of, ask the other kid, "Hey, you want to play?" And you make a friend. And so I saw a boy over there playing, and he looked like he might have been about my age. And I asked him if he wanted to play, but I really only asked him because I wanted to go back in that house. And so I made friends with him just so I could go back in that house. And when I went in there, I mean, I was like, well, I mean, it seems normal. I don't know if I would ever want to live here again, but it's, I had to go back in there. Just something about going back in there. And it still kind of weirded me out, but maybe it's because I didn't feel alone. There were multiple people in that house, the mother, the father, the two kids, and nothing felt threatening. But I had this weird obsession with always wanting to know what was going on inside that house. And I'll probably never know, but
Interesting, man. What do you think
yeah.
that was?
And
What that in the second incident when that vacuum thing was coming toward? What do you think that was?
I honestly have no idea, but I've always looked for words to describe it. And I finally just kind of sat down one day and said, how am I going to describe this in my book? And I'm like, you know, it did look like it was made of leather, or at least that's what it appeared. I wouldn't get close to it, but it was just that sound. And like I said, it wasn't like a vacuum cleaner. It had a eerie, I mean, vacuum like, that's the only way I know how to describe it, sound
Yeah.
to it. It was very high pitch, enough to scare the shit out of you, because when it came in there, it looked like it didn't see me just yet. And then it all of a sudden, I guess because I reacted to it, it saw me. And then so it's like, oh, there you are. And then it turns and then it starts coming towards me. And
Was that floating?
what's that?
Was it floating?
I think it was somewhat levitating, like it was touching the floor, but it wasn't on like wheels. It was just kind of swifting on the floor. And it was just, but I mean, I remember that even at 40 years old, I still remember that like it was yesterday. And um, and it kills me that I don't know. I want to know. Like I
Yeah.
want to know. And funny enough, just here recently, I had an incident that happened to me. Um, we we were members of this one church. It was a small congregation, but we were like a family at that church. And like I said, it wasn't a lot of us, but um, there's a lady named Judy Keithley, and she had a son named Brian Keithley. She also had two daughters. He was the youngest out of the two girls, and so it was two girls and a boy that she had. Um, Brian was, I want to say, yeah, about 4 years older than me. Um, you know, we had gone to church camp together. I mean, we never really played together, but just had few interactions because, you know, when you're 4 years difference in kids' time is very different, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, he was when I saw him, I always looked at him as like an older kid, you know. So, um, but anyway, when he died in 1998 from a car accident. And he was 18, and at that time I was 14. Uh, we hadn't gone back to that church in years, but my uncles, my mom's two brothers, they always stayed in touch with everybody. I mean, they were like a family with that church. So um, we always knew what was going on in everyone's life because honestly, it really wasn't. I think there might have been less than 50 in that entire congregation, or less than 100. So, um, you know, between all the families. But Judy's son was killed in a car accident on a rainy night. I remember that. I remember my uncle coming over and telling us because he had just left her house after getting the news. And I think it hit all of us because if you had met this guy, I mean, this has nothing to do with gay or straight, but he was a gorgeous guy. And not only was he gorgeous on the outside, but inside too. And like he was one of those that you would gravitate to because he just had a really good energy about him. He was just that friend you wanted to have on your side.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like that was the kind of energy and kind of guy he was. But um, just recently, mind you, that was back in 98. I hadn't thought about that shit in years. And so this happened last Friday. I get home, my dogs and I go walk them, and I was really beat. I was really sleepy, tired. I just wanted to go and lay down. My dogs, they sleep in a crate because I don't trust them being out, but occasionally they get a free pass. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to lay here on this couch. It's the only couch that they're allowed to be on. And so, and they're so clingy too that so they don't like to leave my side. So we slept here on this couch together, and it was about 7:30. I mean, literally an early night, 7:30. Fell asleep. I had this dream about Judy Keithley, and it was the same scenario when my mom opened the door to our apartment, and my uncle was standing there in the rain and told us the news that Brian had died. Except in this dream, it was Judy standing there crying. Uh, she was wearing a white two-piece outfit with gold buttons. And we bring her in the house because she's drenched in water from the rain. And she's crying and she's blaming herself for the car accident. And mind you, I have never learned what actually happened, you know, that night. Like, why did he get behind the wheel? Was he drunk? What happened before he got in this accident? I don't know anything. So I'm kind of trying to put the pieces together because this is very eerie now. I in this dream, she talks about her husband, which I confirmed later with my mom that he did have an affair with a stripper. In the dream, this woman was very skimpy dressed, like a mini skirt, halter top. In the dream, I didn't know any of this, and I remember in my dream thinking she's kind of young for him, kind of slutty. And they lived in this big, beautiful house. I mean, this is Brian's stepdad, but nonetheless, they're in a mansion, because at church, we always knew them as, the rich family. Um, so he left Judy for literally a stripper. And so, in the dream, I saw that. And you know what's funny? I dreamed about being at their house. So we take Judy back to the house. I had never been in this house, but there's a stairway that's in the center of the foyer that goes up and then splits off into two different staircases. Beautiful, beautiful. I actually looked up that house, and it's the same from my dream. I mean, instantly I saw it, and I just confirmed that just yesterday.
Wow,
Because
man.
I couldn't, everything that happened, what I'm about to tell you, like I could not, even now, I couldn't get it out of my mind. So just yesterday, I looked up that house trying to find it because I remember it was in a part of the area that we lived in, DeSoto, which is a subdivision south of Dallas. It was on the street's called Pleasant Run, and Pleasant Run is this long, busy street. We lived on Pleasant Run, but if you go further, probably about 10 miles out on Pleasant Run, that's literally how long this road is. There's mansions out there. There's all these beautiful homes. So it's like a night and day difference on that one strip, that one street. And so I saw that it was on Zillow, and I went on there, saw the house, and they had 41 photos on there. And I looked and I said, that's that stairway. And then in the dream, when she confronts her husband and that woman standing there, we're in their bedroom. I saw the bedroom. I said, I know this. Like, you know how when you know something, like I've been here. So I was in there in that dream. So funny enough, I wake up from that dream and I look over, and I have, I don't even know if you can see them, but I have these lights all over my room, like just regular hanging lights. So when I turn this light off, um, there's a nice glow. I mean, I can see in this room when the main light is off, and plus I have this lamp that changes colors. So there's vivid light. And then across the way, there's a closet where the dog's crates are. The light was on, and so I turn. There's somebody standing there, and it's Brian. And Brian has on a navy shirt. It looks like it was like an American Eagle. Now, I can't be sure about the logo, but like American Eagle type of logo shirt, because it looked like he had one of those established in blase, not 18, whatever the company was founded. I can't be too clear, but it was a navy shirt. At least that's what it looked like in the light. But there was some logo. It was probably, it looked like a shirt that was made to look vintage. So it was just this t-shirt made to look vintage. Probably some light denim pants. And at this point, I could be guessing on the pants part. I don't know. But because I'm staring at him in the face, his face looks very refined, looks very fresh, and like he's, just rested. And so he always had his hair parted, clean cut. And I'm here on this couch asleep with the dogs. And I look at him. I'm looking at him. And he says to me, my birthday's August 30th. And I looked at him and I go, okay. And I said that as if it was no big deal because I've never had anything like this other than those night terrors, which, I was a kid, but be 40 something years old. I had this dream. I wake up from it. I can see him standing right there. And he says, my birthday is August 30th. I go, okay. And I say it like no big deal because I'm like, who are you? I mean, I know who it is, but is that who it is? You know, I just, I didn't know what to think of it. So I just turned around on the couch, like, and I'm almost faking it to him, like, oh, I'm so, sleepy. I'm going to close these eyes and turn around. And I'm turning around and I'm just like, is this happening? And so I just closed my eyes and I just counted three in my head. And then I opened them and I just kind of faced the couch, just for like another minute, maybe 2 minutes. And I'm trying to listen to see what I hear, and I don't hear anything. So I turn around, he's not there anymore. But I
Wow.
know for certain I did not fall back to sleep. And I didn't know when his birthday. So I remembered August 30th. I went to go look up that tombstone. His birthday was August 30th. It
Wow.
was born in 1979, August 30th. And I don't know what he was trying to tell me, what that dream meant, but I do know that my mom had went to the name of the congregation was Rolling Hills Baptist Church. So they had a Rolling Hills reunion and all members of the congregation came, and she said that Judy seemed to be in good spirit. And this was literally about a month ago. I would have went, but I had some obligations that weekend that I had to attend to that I already pre-committed to. So because I remember telling my mom, oh, I would have went to that, but you want to hear the eeriest part, just because if people think I'm BSing. So just to kind of prove that there's a little proof in this, that I'm not lying. Because, sometimes you hear these stories and you think, are they making it up? Because I'm telling you, I did not fall asleep. I saw what I saw. Believe me or not. I mean, that to physically see someone in your house and you're like, dude, am I fucking dreaming? I mean, but I want to be kind of calm and cool too, because I was a kind of a slum kid, it's a street kid to some degree, like when you're raised in the hood, you learn how to react to shit, like,
Yeah.
like play it cool. Cause if you
Just-
show fear, you know, it's gonna be bad. So you
Yeah.
don't want to show
Yeah.
any fear. That's the game I was playing. Well, here, this is the next eerie part. So this is Saturday now. So 7:30 at night, a crash Friday. We're just going to say a dream, quote unquote, air quotes. Uh, we're going to call it a dream. It was probably I'm thinking about this dream all day. I'm cleaning the house. I'm thinking about it all day. Um, my partner had asked me to go to a Halloween party. And I told him it was a Halloween house party, and he said he would pick me up later in the day because he's a mechanic, so he does some like side hustle work outside of his actual job. So he was around doing that, and he was going to pick me up probably about later that night, like late, about 8 or 9 that night. So it's probably about 5 or 6 in the evening, and I text my mom. I said, I had a strange dream last night about Judy and Brian Keithley. My mom texted me back and she said, you're shitting me. I had a dream about Judy Keithley last night too. So my mom had a dream about Judy Keithley that same night. So we both had a dream about her and we couldn't shake it, except mine was a little more of a visitation. And I told her, and my mom, when she said, because my mom and I have always had this kind of synchronicity where we would be thinking the same thing. I mean, something as small as I remember one time we made a big deal about this, but it was so random. Like we were in the car, we see a gas station. I said, you know what I'm craving? I'm craving a payday. And she looks at me, she's like, me too. Like, I mean, we would always be synchronized that way. And then
Yeah.
if there was a certain song that came on the radio, we might start humming at the same time, or we did a lot of that. I mean, even now we still do that. So we're always very much on the same frequency,
Yeah.
and it's really weird. But that
Wow.
really kind of validated that whole incident. Was she had a dream same night all that happened to me. She had a dream, and I almost didn't even text her and to tell her about it, because there's part of me that wants to believe that happened, but there's, and I kind of makes me wonder too, which is kind of hypocritical of me, considering mystic talk is all about going from 3D into 5D, bringing and connecting the dots. And then now that I'm kind of becoming more open and receptive to this, it's almost like, do I really want to? Uh, it's I'm kind of getting little dosage. I've been telling, I think you had 305 Paranormal. I listened to that episode
Yeah.
of yours. Good stuff. I listened to Deborah that you had, um, Paranormal Paradigm. So I posted about this on an episode. I do what's called a snippet episode, which is if I have an idea or something, just, at random, I call it a snippet. Like, I got to post this. And so I do it. It doesn't have to be in season, can be out of season. And so I did it, and I tagged them in the post and said, I want your expert opinion on this. And so Deborah thinks it could be me, that I have a gift to be a medium. And it's funny because I haven't gotten back to her yet, but my mom, one of our family psychics, said that I had the gift to be a medium. And so I'm like, well,
Interesting.
maybe
Do
that's what that is.
do you feel like you're opening yourself up more? And the more you potentially open yourself up, the more you're going to start seeing.
I do. And I'm going to tell you something else, because I almost forgot this. This is so important. I was very close to my mom's mother, my grandma Humphrey, and this is no disrespect to my mom, because my mom and I are like best friends. I don't know if you have, but maybe your listeners might know this movie, because we're very pop culture in our family, and so especially when it's 80s and 90s, and so there was one of our favorite childhood movies. It's called Mermaids, with Cher, Winona Ryder, Christina Ricci, and so
I'm not sure if I've
it
seen
came
it.
out. I think it came out in 1990, but it's worth the watch. It's an Orion film. Um, but I describe that as my childhood. There is that my mother is Cher, I'm Winona, and my sister is Christina Ricci, because you know Winona's kind of always taking care of Christina Ricci, and it's not that Cher is not a mom. She is a mom. She takes care of the house. She's raising her family, but um, she's kind of that sexy mom type, like cares about appearances, and you know, and my grandma, I think I catered to her because she was more of that mother figure that did the domestic stuff, the cookies, the pies. There was always something sweet to eat at her house. There was always food there, like home cooked food. And my mom, no disrespect, her version of cooking is defrosting, so um
Like
that
me.
that's yeah. If and so I always had this close bond with my grandma Humphrey, and I miss, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of her. But I have a lot of her mannerisms and a lot of her qualities. Even my mom, it makes me feel good about myself when my mom tells me, she goes, when I was standing there cooking for us for Thanksgiving, and she goes, you know how you put your hand on the back of your hip, at the bottom of your waist? She goes, and you're moving that skillet. And she goes, your grandma used to cook just like that. And I go, really? And so it's kind of a pride thing, because I love that woman. I miss her terribly. And so, I was very heartbroken when she died, and it's been well over 10 years now that she's been gone. Um, but we would sit around, talk, drink coffee together. And I mean, I drink coffee since I was 6. So if not younger than that, I mean, that's what we did in our family, was drink coffee. Um, and I think I'm 6'3", so I think it's a complete myth to say it stunts your growth. So, I think it's okay for kids to drink coffee. But I wanted to say this is that she contacts me all the time. That much I do know for fact because she was a big Elvis fan. And I don't have Elvis on my playlist by any means, but there's a particular song. It was her favorite. It's called Suspicious Minds by
Great song.
Elvis.
Yeah.
And I could be listening to because I really don't listen to anything past 2005 or 2006. So everything pretty much stays in the 80s or 90s. I don't care for music today unless it's like folk music. I tend to gravitate to more of that these days if it's going to be something past 2006. But I remember listening to Nirvana and listening to some Alice in Chains. And then in the middle of that, and it's just populating that type of music. So where does Suspicious Minds come in? You know?
Yeah.
And then one time I'm listening to more of the 90s, early 90s pop, like Taylor Dane. I forget who sings that song, Tom's Diner song, but it was more of that type of 90s, that early 90s. And then all of a sudden Suspicious Minds comes on. And every time it does, in that moment, I have a strong thought about my grandmother. Like I think of, I could be making something for dinner. I would think she'd be proud of me right now for making my own meal. And then that song plays. And
Wow.
then I remember my partner, I told him about it. We're in the car one day. And like I said, we're listening to some 80s hip hop. In the midst of 80s hip hop, that song comes in and he goes, "That's your grandma." It is. And I had my
That's cool,
sunglasses
man.
on. So I was crying a little bit inside. I don't like to show my emotion. I like to keep that private. So, you know, when it plays, I get a little teary-eyed because I know without a shadow of a doubt she's talking to me. And I've had that same thing happen to me with a friend of mine that I met in community theater. We were doing the Titanic Aftermath play. Her name was Martha Sela. And like I told you, was a child actor and all that. And she was in the play. She eventually had to drop out due to her diabetes. It was causing her not to memorize her lines. She was trying to get back into acting after so many years of being away from it. But her daughter volunteered behind the scenes, and her name was Stacy. But something about Martha, it was her look. She had like this porcelain white skin and this jet black hair. She almost looked like Mrs. White from the movie Clue. And so there's just something very mysterious, like you want to know this woman. And so I made it a point. She almost had like a modern goth look to her, without even trying. And so I would go to her house because I didn't know this until later, but I would go to her house unannounced because, you didn't have cell phones and everything. So, you would show up to people's house unannounced sometimes. I mean, that's just what you did. So I would go there unannounced and I smelled weed and we started smoking weed together. So it was great because I was like, hey, she didn't realize that I could smell that. And I said, "You smoke weed?" And she goes, "Yeah." I said, "All right." So we would smoke a bowl together, and her daughter, she'd smoke with us. But it wasn't until the movie Serving Sarah, I don't know if you know, it's with Matthew Perry, Elizabeth Hurley, and
Sure.
they filmed part of that in Fort Worth, and so we were on the set for that. We're just doing extra work for 5 days, and it's the monster truck scene. And a lot of that industry, especially in acting, especially if you're an extra too, it's a lot of it's waiting around, just sitting and waiting around. 12-hour day. It was a 12-hour day, 5 days a week. I only paid like $75, but you do it because you love it. And so it's just something about that, watching the equipment being brought in, and the crew, and I mean, just everything. I just love just the atmosphere of filmmaking itself, like creating something. And so we're sitting there, me and her daughter. This is the first time she and I actually really connected. And we started talking about how we wanted to make our own movie. And so I was working at a dry cleaners at that time after school. And so I saved up about $1,000 and bought a camera. And back then, you didn't have the editing software like you did. So we didn't know how we're going to get this film edited. But as long as we had it on film, we were good. Unfortunately, we never got it done, but we did manage to do other projects in the near future. But a couple of other instances that happened to me, I'll try to make them quick, but there was a guy that we asked to help us with the film project. We were going to do, it was called Teen Mutilation. We were going to do kind of like a feature film, but with multiple stories. And really what this was all about was just getting a film off the runway. That was it. So I didn't want to write a full script by myself. So I brought him along and said, look, you do at least, 50 pages of a script. I'll do 50. Stacy, you do 50. And we'll make it into a feature and we'll say it's 3 different stories all in one. And so we did that. And I gave him a scenario. He wrote it. But, we didn't know what we were doing. And so he asked me if he could take that project and do something else with it. And you know what? I was kind of relieved because I had a hard time with Stacy getting her to commit because she was going through a lot of emotional issues. You know how teenagers are, because we were only like 16, 17. Just a weird period in life. And, I was highly motivated where, she was just pretty much at that stage in her life, just all talk. So he goes off and actually does amazing things with this film as a short feature film, and it wins prizes at Deep Ellum Film Festival. And I felt kind of betrayed. And this just has to do with more jealousy. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was more of my ego than anything else. But we kind of became rivals at that time. And it wouldn't be until my 30s, looking back on that situation, that I said, he rightfully asked me if he could take that project away. Why should I feel any type of way? And I think it was because when we did the casting for that film, one of the girls that he cast, I knew she came from money. And I remember him saying something about she was going to put part of the funding for his film. And I knew he saw me over here struggling to get Stacy's ass in gear, to like, come on, let's go, let's do this. I was juggling a lot. I knew he could see that. And even though Stacy was a friend that I was loyal to, but had he pulled me aside and said, look, this is the deal. You can't rely on her. You want to get this done. Let's make it happen. I want to take you over here. I think I felt more betrayed in that sense. Like, I know you must have seen my passion, and I'm pulling the weight for me and this other chick that won't help me. She got better. We did eventually do other projects and submit them to festivals, but it was a long time before she actually got her ass into gear and to help me with these things. So there was a bit of resentment. So I had a dream about him one night that we made amends. And it was during COVID, during 2020 lockdown. I think it was like August of 2020. Hadn't thought of him in years, but had a pleasant dream. We were on a beach and we were talking, shooting the shit. And I said, I'm sorry about everything that happened, that I blamed you for all those years. I said, looking back on it, I think it was more of my ego feeling hurt that you became a success before I did, because I wanted it so much. I wanted so much to be known in that world, because I love everything about filmmaking. Like, I wanted to be part of that arena. And yet he managed to win an Emmy. His name is Ash Christian, if you want to look him up. He won an Emmy. He's done some television, indie films. He was known for a film called Fat Girls. He's good friends with a lot of, I wouldn't call them, maybe they're A-listers, A or B-listers, like Thora Birch from American Beauty. They were good friends, but we're on this beach in the dream, and I'm apologizing to him, telling him that, I don't care about anything else. I just wish we could have been good friends. And he goes, yeah, same here. He goes, I wish we could have too. And I remember waking up thinking that was such a good dream. So I Googled him, just kind of, I guess you could say, internet stalking, and come to find out he had passed away a week earlier. And he passed away in Puerto Vallarta on a beach. Well, not on the beach, but in his hotel at the resort.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? The resort that he passed away in was called Rio Vallarta. When my ex and I broke up of 8 years, I spent a week at Rio Vallarta with this guy I was seeing long distance in Montreal. We had spent a week there at that same resort. So I'm
Wow.
just saying that there's so many
Yeah,
synchronicity
man.
type of moments, and because I thought of him, that happened. And another thing that happened, this girl, Norma Jean Eden, her sister Paula and Patsy. I used to play with her sister Paula. We used to run around the streets barefoot, climbing trees and shit, and just very country kids and getting into shit. And I mean, some of my best memories with those girls was I remember she thought she was going to get some rollerblades for Christmas. And when her mom went to work, they were so poor that they didn't have an actual lock on their door. They used the kitchen knife to push it through the door to keep the door locked. And so, it's, even though they were dirt poor, it's those moments that make life worth living, like to look back and talk about those things, because
Yeah.
my specific memory of those two was Norma and Paulo. It was during Christmas. Norma helps her pull the present out from the back of the tree, but like the Tasmanian devil she was, she just rips into that gift, and she goes, Paula, I don't even know if we have paper to wrap this shit back up with. And so we took a sample of it, and mind you, the oldest one in the group is Norma. She's 13. And so Paula's like 9, I'm 10. We get in one of the vehicles that was out back, and we're driving across town like 13, 10. Like it wasn't uncommon for us as 10, 12-year-old, 13 getting behind a wheel. So we found the paper. But I meant to say is Norma passed away too, and I had a dream about her prior to finding out that she did pass. I had a dream about her. We were walking down that same street that she lived on and that my grandma lived on. And she just kind of looks back at me. It was almost picturesque, like cinematic. And she looks back at me. She had red hair, freckles, and she turns back and looks at me, and her hair's just kind of like coming across her face. And she just looks at me and smiled. That was all I remembered from the dream, and until I looked and found out that she had passed. And then one other instance was I worked for Saks Fifth Avenue for 6 years in Dallas. One of my favorite companies to work for. I never knew that it could hit me when that store closed. Like it could hit me in the heart, that it felt like we were breaking up family. But we were a family unit, but we had a lot of coworkers there. But there was this one older lady. She was like in her 70s. She was from Germany. Her and her husband had lived in Dallas for over 20 some odd years, maybe 30 or longer. I had a dream about her because she worked in the designer department. I did visual merchandising, and that's what I currently still do. I'm a visual merchandising manager. And so we were basically walking in the rotunda, which is this round room on the second floor, marble flooring, all different designers like Escada, Armani, Collezione, Escada, St. John. And so we're just kind of walking and we're admiring all the beautiful designers. And she goes, isn't it beautiful? And it kind of reminded me of the scene in Breakfast at Tiffany's, when she utters the words that nothing can hurt us here. Like we're in a safe place. Only good things can happen. And so that very much felt like that Breakfast at Tiffany's scene. So she has me by my arm and we're just walking. And I hadn't thought of Ingrid in years since we closed Saks. Um, and so anyway, we all moved on after Saks had closed, but I had that dream about her. She's holding onto my arm. We're admiring all the designers, and we had a good long conversation. What we talked about, I can't even remember, but I just remember it was a pleasant dream. And I get to work, I wake up, I get to work, and this was back when I smoked. And so I light up a cigarette, get on my phone, look on Facebook. This was back when I was on Facebook. And Kim Gertz, she was the designer manager at the time. She had posted that Ingrid had passed away about a month earlier, but they were going to be holding services that following weekend, and that if anyone wanted to go, they could. And so she had been dead for about a month, but they didn't have the service because she had family from Germany that wanted to come in because she was going to be buried here in Dallas with her husband. And so
Wow.
That hit me like a ton of bricks, because I said, I just dreamed about her last night. And I remember, I tell my mom everything. So I text my mom and I said, you aren't going to believe this. I had this very vivid dream of Ingrid. We're walking, and of course I had to explain who Ingrid was, because it wasn't like I ever really talked about Ingrid. And so talked about her, and had a nice long chat. I wake up, go to work, look on Facebook, and it's right there. She had passed, and her services were going to be that following weekend.
Wow.
So there's nobody that convinced me that there is not something beyond this life. And my grandmother said some words to me that really hit me, because when I was battling my own religious convictions or beliefs, and not really knowing what to do with that, even at a young age, this was back in my early teen years. I remember her getting off the phone with one of her girlfriends, and I guess they had been talking about religion, people of other faiths, and if you don't know God, you're going to hell or something, but yes, my grandma was a Christian, a Southern Baptist, and Southern Baptists, let me tell you, they're just as bad as the Catholics when it comes to, like very strict, but they do some hypocritical shit too, but I would just remember my grandma saying, oh, I don't think it was kind of under her breath, but she said it. I think she knew I could hear her, but I don't know if she knew that I would be taking it to heart, because she says to me, I don't think it matters what you believe, as long as you believe in something. In the end, we're all going to the same place. And, it's funny. I saw one of those life after death videos, and this guy, I've always had this good sense of knowing when people are genuine or when people are fake, people that you can trust, people that you can't. Not to say that I haven't misjudged some, but for the most part, I can get a good sense of a person and know if that's a genuine person, a good person. And I don't think that has anything to do with medium. That just has to do with intuitiveness and instincts. And, I remember when I was coming through this whole spiritual awakening, I realized that I did so much trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to keep up appearances. And I did it unknowingly, posting shit on Facebook, posting my trip to Iceland, posting my trip to Paris, posting my trip to, wherever it was, I was to Montreal when I would go up there frequently, just posting all this shit. And then for what, and then, but I'm not showing them pictures of a Honda Civic, so, I say all that to say this. It wasn't until after that DUI that I really became spiritually awakened. I really started reflecting and looking at things, i.e. getting the podcast together. And, as I'm sure where you are, you have those pretentious wannabe hipster areas, where, they feed you something on a leaf or a piece of lettuce, and, they think that they're so trendy.
Yeah.
Or, or some cheap ass latte that they sell for $10 with a little design on there. And that's really what sells it, but you can make it at home for practically nothing. It's just, I look at people, and I've said this before in my podcast, when I see people that wear labels, like you see a lot of people that wear the name brands, and this isn't any disrespect. This is just what it is. Those are people that need to be validated. I mean, when you really truly think about it, when you get, and I don't think they do it knowing that intentionally, but when you get downright to it, you need validation. You are, and I know what that looks like because I've been there. And so you need to be validated, whether you know it or not. You have a lot of insecurities because if you didn't, you wouldn't have to flaunt all this and just, and, you know, you really think that these tangible things validate and solidify who you are as an individual, but they don't. If your job title, your tangible things were to be stripped away from you, who are you? That's the question. Who are you? Like who are you really? Aside from tangible things, titles, zip code, what have you, who are you? That is the most pivotal, important thing in life, is who you are. And I truly try to live by that. I used to fly off the handle like no other. I now have reached a point to where if I know someone's wrong, there's really no point, and I should share this with anybody, there's no point in arguing. There's no point in arguing. Everyone has an opinion. They're like assholes. Everyone's got one. And, you just, you're not going to change the world by adding a comment, making a post about some bullshit out of your 100 to 1,000 followers. You're just not. So, there's no reason to be combative because everyone thinks they're right, with their convictions and their ideology. And I'm not saying anything against that. I don't even have a problem with you believing differently than I do. It's when you force it upon me, but even then, I'm not going to react. I don't have time. I'm not wasting that energy on reacting to selfish pettiness. And that's not to be rude. That's not to put anyone down, because I have to honestly say, and this sounds like bullshit, but it's not. I genuinely love those people. I love everybody. I don't even have to know somebody, because that's what my faith tells me, is to simply love.
Yeah.
To love thy enemy, love thy friends. And it can be hard. I'm not going to doubt that or lie about that. I'm not over here trying to claim that I'm some guru, because I sure as hell am not. I got my own demons, my own things to work out. But I would also add that while you're trying to reach your higher self and become that type of person that just lets things go, you're going to slip from time to time, but you're human. Don't beat yourself up. I mean, I do that a lot. I used to say, I meditated before work, and then I got into traffic, and then they just all these things start happening. And I'm like, they just managed to kick the sand right out of my zen. And, you try to be a good person, but they just won't let you. But really, it's you. You can allow it to affect you. And I always tell people, remember this. There's a reason why you woke up late for work. There's a reason why someone shouted and yelled at you for no good reason. Think of it like this. Just like this conversation is going on right now, there's a cause and an effect to this. I might say something, just one little thing, that might steer you in a different course tonight, for tomorrow, or the next day, just from simply this conversation alone. And I find that interesting, how certain people that come into our life that have nothing to do with our, the ultimate outcome, but somehow inevitably shape that to lead you in that direction.
Yeah, man.
I find that fascinating. That if you ever get a chance, there's, like I said, all these things started happening to me. It's almost like God was telling me, watch this, do this, and I'm generalizing God, whoever that God is. But um, I found it when I started thinking about synchronicity right after I got out of the slammer, and feeling really shitty and bad and poor about myself, but yet at the same time I was feeling kind of spiritually enlightened. I know it sounds weird because in that moment I decided I'm deleting all social media accounts. I'm going to find out who my friends are because I'm going to go MIA. I just kind of need to do a lot of self-reflecting. And I probably had about close to 2,000 friends on Facebook. And mind you, out of those 2,000, most of them were from like when I used to teach acting, and I would go to different cities through these third-party companies for these big rip-off scam. I hate to say it, but that's what they were. These rip-off conventions, like get in front. You ever heard those commercials where they say, have you ever thought about putting your child in Disney or Nickelodeon? Or, it
Yeah.
was, I worked for one of those companies on the
Okay.
side. And so I know how it all works, but I made connections that way. And I just wanted to see, because I was always willing to lend advice to people, good, solid advice, even when I was working with this ripoff company, because I would always tell them in the class, if you don't get yourself an agent at this convention, I want you to contact me and we'll explore other options, because I felt that that was the least I could do, since I can't really tell them because this company is paying my salary. I'm not the one that sold them on the packet deal. And some of them do get picked up, rightfully so, but there's others. It's all about selling the idea, selling the
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah. They're
So
paying for something that they're not guaranteed.
exactly. But I mean, if you legitimately have talent, I say go for it. But the idea is they're just going to sell it to you and think, oh, we can get you up and ready in a couple of weeks. No, I mean,
Yeah.
you, that's simply impossible. So I would always offer them an alternative incentive, and I didn't have to. And before the DUI, out of those contacts that were in my phone, I had maybe programmed in my phone probably about 300 or 400. I would literally go through every single one of them. Mind you, these are clients that I felt I developed and evolved a relationship with. And so I literally would call all of them within a 2-week cycle, call every single one of them in my downtime within a 2-week span. How's your family? How's your kids? What's your husband doing? What's your wife doing? Everything's good. Okay. Or if they called, needed some advice, I would stop in what I was doing and listen and give them that advice, because I love the industry and I love giving them that knowledge that they need in order to, just pursue their dream. And so I did this on a regular. I mean, you talk about exhausted. Out of 400 people in my contacts in a span of 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks was up and I'd done it, I do it all over again. Anytime I had downtime, it was all about making sure that they knew that I was there. If you needed something, I was there. After that DUI, I said, you know what? No, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, we're going to see who's there for me. And so um, you can you can have respect and love for other people, but you can't do it all. So in that time away and off of social media, I was lucky, because I always say this too: you're lucky if you manage to make it through this life with 5 people, or at least ones that you can count on one hand through this life, if you manage to keep them throughout your life. So, I mean, really, I can name 5, and that's the only ones I have, that's including family and non-family, but they are family, they're my family. So, um, and it's just interesting after doing this podcast and meeting all these interesting people and their stories, I feel like, between Jen and Mondo, Deborah, Kevin, and David, I feel like maybe we all knew each other in a past life,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
and maybe this is how we're connecting in this life. Maybe we
Yeah.
were in the cosmos and said, you know what, they're going to have this little device called podcasting, And, a lot of shit in 2020 is going to get real. You're going to start talking about conspiracy theories, ghosts, supernatural, and that's where you guys are going to come together. So,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good
who's
thought,
to say?
man.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say that's not, um, um, if that's not how the game is played?
Yeah.
Because, and without saying too much, but I have an idea of who I was in my past life, and if anyone that wants to check it out, there's an episode on that on Mystic Talk.
Oh, interesting,
Yeah.
man. What episode is that? If people want to go over
Uh,
there.
I think it was I don't know the episode number, but okay, so it was Joan Crawford. The I believe without a shadow of a doubt that was my past life. There was a lot
Interesting.
of things that she did. Like one, she's from Texas. I mean, even though she's from San Antonio and I'm from Dallas, but the synchronicity there, and then her being in New York. I've lived in New York. I've spent time in Los Angeles. She's lived in Los Angeles. I never lived in Los Angeles, but I've been, and so for work and stuff. And um, so I and then I was very much a germaphobe as a kid. And if you had known me between the age of 5 to 10, I was told so many times as a young kid that I was an old soul. And I would always be the one to, I'm going to wear my collared shirt with my sweater over it, going to school. Like I was just like my parents weren't that way. They were country bumpkins. But I had this thing about me that,
You've been
you
here
know,
before.
yeah. And they were like, he's like a little old man, like the way he carries himself, and you know he keeps things very neat and tidy. He takes care of his stuff. He appreciates he appreciates those that appreciate him, and very much like Joan, there was not one fan that she did not answer in a letter, like handwritten letter, asking them about themselves. And she actually had a lot of pen pal relationships with her fans. And going back to those phone calls too, me calling everybody, um, it was just something that you did because it shows gratitude. It shows that I respect you just as much as you respect me, and I just want to make sure that you know it. And maybe it was overdone and overzealous, but
Yeah.
it she was very OCD, much like myself, an OCDer. Um, you know, uh, there was just a lot of similarities between she and I. And I actually, in the book, I write about these parallels in there. The first chapter talks about Joan on her deathbed in New York City in her apartment, reflecting and reminiscing on her career before she leaves her body and goes into the light. And then she comes out because she died in 76, I believe. Then she comes out into 1983 as Norman Mueller, who's the name of my character, because the name of the book is called The New Norm. Um, so the new Norman. And so, she comes from that life into this boy. And I think that life works like that. It's kind of like a dream. You know how you dreamed, but as the day progresses, you forget about the dream. It's like, I know I dreamed, but I can't recall what I dreamed about.
Yeah. And you might get
And
a flashback. You might get a flashback during the
yeah,
day, and then you remember so much of it. I've had that
yeah.
before.
And I think that that's kind of like when you take physical form and you come into this new existence, you got to relearn how to walk. I mean, I know what it is to break your foot because I broke my foot before, and having to relearn, like it's weird. I can't even explain when you break your foot and you're trying to relearn everything. It's like, I know how to do it, but yet I don't know how to do it, if that makes any sense. So, um, when you're a baby, you have to learn how to talk again. You have to learn how to walk again. Everything's new. So I think as time progresses, once you eventually learn how to walk, you learn how to talk, you forget all that. Much like a dream, you forget where you came from. And you start to accept that this is a 3D world, or even 2D for that matter. That this is all there is, and we really won't know until we die. It's pretty much been set to us as it's black and white, that this is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, even as far as, you've always had fortune tellers, you've always had psychic mediums, you've always had these people since the beginning of time. But the reality is, a lot of people might say they buy into it, but do they really buy into it? They really do think of this as such a 2 or 3 dimensional world that it's just cut and dry. But I really do think if you open your mind, I remember as a kid looking up in the sky and thinking, if I stare long enough, maybe I'll see something. And I also thought, somewhere in this life, I'm going to see significant change. I'm going to see, I know I'm going to live to see something, whether it be good or bad. I'm going to see something. I didn't know what it was, but look at what we're going through now. So
Yeah,
it's
man.
kind of
There's definitely a lot
interesting
of
that, yeah.
interesting
And so,
times to come for sure.
I mean, I really hope this is as the worst that it
Yeah.
gets.
Yeah. Hope we're through the worst, but yeah.
Yeah, because it always gets worse before it gets better. But uh, one other thing too, it's funny about consciousness too. My mom and I were going through a photo album, and there's a picture of me, probably about 2 years old. It was probably probably was my second birthday. And because I asked my mom, she said, I don't know, you're probably about 1 or 2. She goes, but you fell asleep in your cake. And I told her, I said, I know it was only 1 or 2. And she said, yeah. And so I said, it's funny. I remember being in that high chair. I mean, I don't remember it vividly, but I remember thinking in my head, because there was a bunch of people there for my birthday. I'm in this high chair with this slice of cake, and I wasn't getting any attention from anybody. So I was like, fuck it. I didn't say that, but I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep. I'm gonna pretend to nod my head, and I'm gonna fall asleep in this cake, and that's gonna get everybody's attention. And I did it. But I mean, how would I have known that would get
Yeah.
everybody's attention in the room at that age?
Yeah, man.
I find that just very interesting, that and that must be kind of what an old soul is, that you're already kind of quick wit. You've been here a few times, you know how the game is played.
You're learning faster. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just,
Interesting.
because I remember looking at that picture and seeing how little I was, but yet I remember consciously thinking, if I just nod my head and pretend to fall asleep in this cake, everybody will get a good laugh at my expense, and somebody will come to this high chair and pick me up, and I'll get out of here. So it's just weird
Interesting,
that
man.
being that little, not until we looked at those photos years later, I thought, wow, I was like, how could I have known that that's what it would take to get me out of this chair?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So what was that?
I was going to say, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've still got so many questions for you.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of questions?
I want to talk to you about your experience that happened literally. Well, it's literally like 3 days ago now, isn't it? Oh, what day are we on? I've lost track of the
Yeah.
days. So
Today's
it's
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So this happened on
5
Saturday.
days.
So it's, yeah,
Yeah.
5 days ago. I mean, it must be so fresh in the memory.
Uh-huh.
What an incredible experience. Did that day mean anything? I mean, could that possibly be the time that he passed? The date
Uh,
or
you know, the date that he passed, I would have to go and look back, but it wasn't, because I remember looking at everything. I don't remember. I knew he died in 1998. Can't remember the date. I think it was like in November or something.
so it's not far.
Uh,
Not far
well,
from
yeah,
yeah,
I could be
interesting.
mistaken though. I could be mistaken. I'm not quite sure, but it's funny. And when I feel like I've learned something, just like you said, somebody hits me with something that I thought, well, maybe I need to go back and look at it again, and then I find out that there is something more to it.
Yeah.
Because just like, what if I had not texted my mom I mean, I just think that's so weird that she had the same dream that I did. And to tell people this, I know sounds absurd. And I'm going to be honest, I hear people all the time. I mean, not so much now. I buy a little more into it now than I did in the past. But I would say before 2020, had you told me any of this, I might have nodded my head and then talked shit about you behind your back, like, oh yeah, they're crazy, they think they saw us and they just want attention, like that was my mindset. And it's no longer the way I think. My partner, actually, his mom was a psychic before she died, before she passed. And we went to I don't know what they call it in Spanish, because he's Mexican, and they've been in Texas back when his family can be traced back all the way back when Texas was Mexico. So they've been here since before Texas became a state. Um, generations. So his mom, they went to some store. I don't know what they call it in Spanish. He tells me this name all the time, and I can't believe I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's a store in Oak Cliff, Texas, we went to, where they sell like sage. They sell even some of the blessed, the saints that have been blessed, that you can buy and take to your home to protect you. And they also sell the candles that you light for the dead, or the deceased. And then they have tarot cards. And so I told, uh, he noticed that I was playing around with some tarot cards that I had bought at Barnes and Noble years back, because I kind of fooled around with them back when I was about 21, 22 years old. I'm now 40. And so I just recently, this past couple of years, I forgot I even had the deck. And so when I found it, I started playing with them again. I still had the little booklet to tell me what things were. And, I remember that his mother did tarot readings. And so I asked him about them. I said, what's the significance of these cards? What do they mean? Or how do you even lay them out? Like, I'm so confused. And then I learned that you kind of establish your own system. And I didn't know that. And because I've been to different fortune tellers, and I've seen them lay out cards differently. And so I was always so confused about how that even worked. And then he told me that you can't see anything because you bought yourself those cards. But it's weird because I get so many mixed messages, and these are people that I genuinely believe know what they're talking about. Because I remember I told it to Deborah. I said, my partner is going to get me some tarot cards for my birthday that had been blessed. And he says that in order for the tarot to work, they have to be a gift given to you. They have to be given to you in order for you to see and read the cards. And so I said, okay. That was the first Deborah had ever heard about that. So I don't know, but I'll tell you, the weirdest thing is that the guy that worked at that store, and he didn't tell me, my mom was with us that day. And so she had come over for the weekend. We went joyriding around Dallas or what have you to some of the sites. And we stopped by that store because he was going to get me the tarot card deck for my birthday, but he had to go pick them out. Let me just back up a minute. He went there to ask the guy. So me and my mom are just kind of circling in the store, looking at stuff, and they're speaking in Spanish. So I have no idea what they're saying. And it would only be later, once we left the store, he told me and my mom that the guy told him that he has the ability to read cards, and that the guy had asked him, did your mother read? And he said, yes, she did. You have the capability. He said, well, another person said that my niece was supposed to pick up where my mother left off. And he says, no, not the granddaughter, you, the son, you have the ability. And so he's getting a deck for himself. So he's going to start looking into it. But I just find it interesting that these are, in my opinion, credible people, I can't speak. It is like, but you still get these mixed messages. Some people think it's this way or that way. And so I'm just going to kind of just go with it, follow my instincts, because my instincts have never proven me wrong, much like that feeling I had. So I think the ability is there. I just got to kind of find what works best for me.
Yeah.
And I feel more excited because of that situation that happened to me. You know what was weird when that happened to me? Everyone thinks they know how they would react in those situations. Some would say I would have ran off. Some say I would have asked more questions. But when I guess when it's the first time it happens to you and you see it, I remember knowing it wasn't real, but knowing that in reality, someone is standing in my room. They're just not real, meaning they're not here alive, but they are here. And literally in this moment, I'm wondering, am I dreaming? But I'm wide awake. I am wide awake. I was like, but I have had dreams before. I'm second guessing myself. I said, I have had dreams where I've asked that same question in my dream,
Yeah.
like I, I'm
Did
awake. And
did
so
you stay up after that happened? Was that it? Was you up once that happened? No going back to
after,
sleep.
well, for about an hour, yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I was up. And so I turned around, facing the back of the, or facing my back towards him, to Brian. Uh, and I just counted to three with my eyes closed, but I didn't count it out loud, just in my head. One, two, three. And then I said, I'm going to wake up. And I opened my eyes. I feel like it was that I want to make myself believe that this was a dream. But at the same time, it was very real. It wasn't a dream, because when you wake up from something. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that I felt me close my eyes and counted to three and voluntarily opened them. So no, I mean, I was awake there. But in that hour of being awake before I went back to sleep, once I turned around and he wasn't there, I thought, well, I kind of felt bad, because I wish I had asked more questions. I wish, because it was so real. I mean, there were these lights in here, not to mention I got this lamp over here that changes colors. So, and then the closet light where the dog crates are, the lights are on in there. So I
It was.
vividly saw him. I
Yeah.
mean, there was no, how you hear some of these stories, and I'm not discrediting anybody. I'm saying I believe these stories, but they always say, it was kind of dark. It was kind of this. No, I saw this dude. He was there in the flesh, or at least appeared to be like a physical person. And that's funny too, because one of the Countdown to Halloween episodes, I just thought of it. I just thought of this. I just realized something. Um, Kendra, who I worked with at Saks Fifth Avenue, she's been listening and following my podcast, and she's on a few of my episodes, but she was on one specifically for the Countdown to Halloween, and it's called Angels something, but it says with Kendra Brown on there. It's on one of the 22 episodes. You might want to take a listen to that one. I think you'd find it interesting. You might even want to have Kendra on your show, because she told me the story about being pregnant. And she met this guy. She was living in Dallas from Abilene. Abilene's 3 hours from, it's podunk country, what have you. So, a lot of people are looking to move to Dallas, opportunity and all that. And so she moves to Dallas. She's working at Collin Creek Mall in the loss prevention, apprehending thieves and all that. And she meets a guy that works there in the mall, and, they get involved. And like people that get involved, they sleep together. Well, she gets pregnant, and she's in a place in her life where she's like, I can't have this baby. But at the same time, abortion is not in the equation. She's not, if it, because she believes, much like I do too. I used to not have these beliefs, but I don't believe in abortion. So and neither does she. So she's committed to having this baby, but she's praying to God, like, I can't be a mother right now. If I have to be, I will. But if you could do something about this, I'm just not ready to be a mother just yet. And so I'm not even going to tell the story correctly. So, but in a nutshell, what happened was it made me think of my situation. She's laying in bed one night and she turns over, and it's the guy who got her pregnant. He's in a suit. Um, he sits down on the bed next to her and holds her hand. I think that's what she said. Or he sits on the bed or something, and he looks at her and says, "Everything's going to be okay." And she goes, "Okay." She said, "I'm trying to figure out how he got in my house, but I turn over and I kind of," and it's funny because I did the same thing. Well, she turns over and she gets up and she realizes he's not there in the house, but she didn't go to sleep. She just went to lay down. And then all of a sudden he comes in the room in this suit and he says, "Everything's going to be okay." And I don't know if she got up or when this happened, but she started having contractions. So she calls her brother, goes to the hospital. And, mind you, she prayed about not wanting to have the baby, but she wasn't going to get an abortion. So her brother took her to the hospital, and she was in the hospital in one of the rooms, and she goes to the bathroom and she literally squats the fetus out. And I guess there's like a protocol or a procedure where they might have to do like a day procedure surgery after that kind of incident happens. But the doctor comes and checks her out and says, everything down there doesn't require any kind of, any kind of surgical procedure. He says, this is the first time I've ever seen a clean miscarriage where there wasn't any kind of medical attention required. He goes, "So you're actually good to go." He goes, "This is very bizarre. I've never seen a case like this."
Wow.
So I thought that was very interesting that
Yeah, man.
somebody was, after she prayed about it, then here comes the guy that, well, I asked her about it. I said, "So was it him?" She goes, "Well, it wasn't him. Maybe it was a guardian angel that gave the appearance, showed up as him to make her not scared that someone was in her house." But she was thinking like, "How did he get in the house? The door's locked." And I said, "And you're absolutely sure you were not asleep?" She goes, "No, I hadn't even had time to fall asleep." So I just thought that was
Was she still
very
connect?
interesting.
Was she still connected to the guy after this happened?
I think they stayed connected for a while, but eventually lost contact. So, but I mean, she has two healthy kids now. One's already in high school, which is really weird to believe. Or no, he's in junior high, and it's still hard to believe because I remember when she told me she was pregnant, and so, uh, but it kind of was similar to what happened to me. I wake up from this dream after dreaming about this guy, his mother, dreaming about his mother. I look over, and there he is, standing there in the flesh, and he. I had only seen him one other time, um, back at church when he was 14. So I was about 10 years old at the time. Um, when he died, he was 18. So from 14 to 18, his appearance changed a little bit. Because I remember when he did die, I saw the obituary and I looked at him. I said, "Oh, he looks so grown. He looks like a man. Doesn't look like a little boy." And so the guy that I saw, it was him as a man, as he was when he died. I mean, I just recognized him, and I knew that was him. The shirt he had on, it would just be really interesting to know because, like I said, I had never been in that house, but we always talked about that house, like, "Ooh, they're living large, they're living good, the good life," and um, never been in that house. But I had always like because they always would have like little barbecues for the church at their property. So, and for some reason, I would always not be available, which I would hate. So I always wanted to go in that house. And in the dream, I saw that same staircase. I saw that same bedroom when the husband told her he was leaving for that stripper. And it was well, he didn't say stripper in the dream. I did find out later that he did leave her for a stripper. And funny enough, in that dream, I remember thinking how slutty this girl looked. Like she was attractive, but she was kind of, dressed, like showing a lot of skin.
Yeah.
And
Wow,
so
man.
that was information I didn't know. So for me to, it kind of made me realize what psychic mediums actually mean, when they're telling you what they see, but they're asking you as a question. I always wondered what that was all about. Now I know, because it's like, I can only tell you what I'm seeing. Now it's being confirmed. Oh, well, she was a stripper. Well, that's probably, the
Yeah.
halter top and then she had like stiletto heels. I didn't get a look at the heels, but I just know she was standing tall. So I'm assuming she had on heels. Um, but it's
What?
just, it to see him in the I mean, I'm still like, this happened just last week. So I'm still, I think not one day has gone by. This has not played in my head over and over, because I keep thinking like, I actually, well, I want some time to pass, but I hope it does happen again, because I think what I would have done differently is when he said my birthday is, I think I probably, it just caught me off by surprise.
Yeah, that's so
And I'm,
strange as well that he said that.
yeah, and I'm serious. Like these past few nights, I've been going to sleep. I've been making excuses to sleep in this room because this is where it happened. I didn't sleep in this room last night, but I'm actually going to try again Friday, since it happened Friday. I mean, well, fell asleep Friday around 7:30. But then again, I don't know if I'm forcing it, but I'm going to try. I'm going to see what happens. But, to, I wish I would have asked more questions, but I really wasn't even sure what I should be feeling. Should I feel scared? Should I feel threatened? Or should I feel
Was you
okay?
scared? Did you feel fear when it happened?
I I just remember thinking, this isn't real. I've got to be dreaming. I'm literally playing mind games in my head. Like I don't really know what to think other than this is a dream. Like I'm literally saying, no, this can't be real. And there was a moment there where I actually thought about getting up to approach him. But at the same time, I'm like, do I really want to? And realize that this this isn't. I really thought I was going to give myself a heart attack if I got up and stood. There's just racing. Your mind is
Yeah.
racing, and you really don't know what to. I really, honestly, truthfully, can't tell you if I was scared. If I was more in question mode, you know. But in all honesty, he didn't seem threatening. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was really the ultimate thing. Like, this can't be real. As much as I wanted this to happen, and it's finally happened to me, and now I'm like a hypocrite, and I'm like, no, this can't. This isn't real. Like,
I think a lot of
it was.
people do that though. I think that's quite a common thing to sort of doubt yourself
Yeah,
and try and make it logical in your mind. I think that's a normal part of the process, I think, man. But
I'm
that's an
hoping.
incredible experience.
I'm just hoping that I can. I hear story. It's funny when you hear certain people. Sometimes I believe them, and sometimes I don't. I'm not too sure. Um, but this definitely takes on a whole other level for me now, going, because I listen to podcasts on a daily. I've been listening to yours, so I'll go and listen to others, yours. There's one I like too. Um, Michael Strange from Troubled Minds. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's got some good stuff, but I kind of want to find some more podcasts on the supernatural and hear some of those stories, because I just, you know, really the ones that I do trust the most, that I really want to just, I'm probably going to annoy the hell out of them, but Jen and Mondo and Deborah, because I know they're real. I know they're
They're
authentic,
great. Yeah.
and I know that they're the real deal. So I will be contacting them, because it's just, I'm trying to make sense of it all, because nothing like, other than what I told you about the night terrors, which can always be subjective, did it not? I mean, it was so long ago. I'm 40 years old. That was back when I was 4 or 5. I mean,
Yeah.
but there's still that question of when I was 6 and 7 that I had that knowing of being scared before I actually had something to actually be scared about, the
Yeah.
being chased. And how did I know that this was about to happen? I mean, I didn't know it was going to happen in that way, but I was already scared before the initial incident happened. So, um, funny enough, another thing, back when I was in 5th grade, I remember realizing that we had a psychic in the family, and I thought it'd be cool to go to school and tell everybody I was a psychic, just out of sheer fun. And I was like, I'm going to teach myself to be a psychic. And then it kind of faded, just because I kind of got some backlash at schools for it. So I just kind of, left it alone. But maybe it's always been
Yeah.
there.
Sounds like you are, man. Sounds like you are.
Yeah, yeah. And I just never really, I think I've always believed that we live this life. I've never believed in demons. I never believed in possession. And I guess it could happen because, like I said, I'm more open-minded these days, and the possibilities. I mean, much like I had a guest on my show who we were talking about a lot of other things, but in passing, we talked about Bigfoot. And I said, I don't know if I believe in Bigfoot. And so she said, well, I have some people that, they're well educated, well respected in their community, and, they don't have anything to gain from lying, but they claim that they've seen a Bigfoot, that they had a Bigfoot sight. So it just makes me wonder now. I mean, maybe there is a Bigfoot. I don't know. I think I'm more wanting to keep an open mind about these things, as opposed to just blowing it off as fiction or blowing it off as, tall tales, because, you know, we can't know everything, even like growing up in a church where they tell you this is how you live, this is what you do, this is what will get you in the kingdom of heaven, this is what will get you in hell. How do you know? Because if we're being honest, the book was written by mortals. It was written by men who were inspired, keyword inspired, to write the word of God. And in red text was actually what God said. So, like when anyone tells me that being gay is an abomination, right? Because I try to always make sense of that. I say, well, if you read the red text, God said, if you listen to my word, you shall get in the kingdom of heaven. Well, everything that's in his word is in red text in scripture. The part about the men lying with other men, that's all in black text. So that was from an apostle who was inspired to write at the time, because Christianity was government at one time. It played significant politics in dictating people's way of life. I mean, think about it. Back in the Salem witch trial, how stupid was that? The only way to find out if you were a witch was, if I put you in this water and you die, oops, I guess you weren't, like, well, there's
Yeah,
no
man.
coming back from that. So, we've progressed as a society. I mean, even though we're kind of going back, because we can't even tell you what a fuck a woman is, but um, we're kind of going backwards. But I don't know. It's just it's I try to keep an open mind to think. I think we like to think we know it all, but there is so much out there that we really don't know, you know?
100%, man. Yeah.
And when I was at university, um, I dabbled a little bit in, religious classes. And I asked a professor of mine, I said, how do you know what religion is right from the ones that are wrong? I have Jewish friends, I have Muslim friends, I even have Buddhist friends and Hindus. Um, how can you tell me that they're wrong, especially when that faith has been instilled in you since day one? You can't really break that once it's instilled in you. I mean, you can, but it's very hard to do. And you mean to tell me they're going to hell? I mean, what's the deal? And so he said, think of it as, he said, they all basically have the same kind of message, which is promoting good. And then he said, it's like when you play the game telephone, you know, you start a secret and say you're sitting in a group of 30 kids. By the time that secret gets back to you, it's different, but yet some of it's still very similar from when you started the secret initially. But think if out of those 30 people, including yourself, there's probably about 5 or 6 different interpretations there. So really, when you think about it, maybe religion is all a subjective interpretation. I mean,
Yeah.
it legitimately was written by man. You know, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or we should dismiss it, but I don't think we should take it as literal as we do. And I really do think that, and that's, I'm not saying let's throw religion out, but I do believe that, you know, I think we're being, I think the biggest problem in humanity is ego, you know, because it's always about I'm right, you're wrong, and proving a point. So,
Yeah.
um, but I don't know. I'm eerily excited about exploring everything that had transpired Friday going into Saturday night. You know, I'm going to be getting in touch with Deborah, maybe see if there's something that I can tap into, and especially getting the tarot cards, and maybe I can, you know, figure out what works best for me in these cards and how to read them and interpret it. Um, I don't know, life. You know, you think at this point you'd have all your issues solved, or you know, you're. It's like I'm still growing. I'm still learning things,
100%.
and
100%, man.
yeah.
Yeah. We're growing
So
every
I'm,
day. That's the thing. We grow
yeah,
every day.
yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much. And like I said, the book when it comes out, it's pretty much telling the story of all these different things that I've just laid out for you, but combining it in a fictional way, because I always thought it would be interesting. What if I had met my partner, and what if I had met my best friend as kids? Like, what would our life look like? So I basically tell the story by taking composites of characters from childhood and kind of combining it with the two of them as if we met as kids, their family. So if you like throwbacks, you know, make a lot of 80s reference into early 90s.
Love that.
I do believe in vibrational frequencies. You know, I do believe. Oh, that was the one thing I left out. Another incident that happened to me going into music, because my chapters in my book are all named after songs from artists, um, and there's a reason for that, because as I told you earlier, my grandmother communicates through me by that song by Elvis, "Suspicious Minds." Um, Stacy, my friend, her mother, Martha, when we went out to the gravesite, my partner went with me, and uh, Martha was very much a hippie. You know, she loved the 60s. I mean, she was stuck in a time warp. Like, everything was about the 60s. And so every time you talk to her, I wish I could go back to the 60s, you know. And she loved Jim Morrison from The Doors. That was her favorite band. Uh, so Stacy spoke about that in her eulogy, that how she loved rock music, she loved the Doors, and when my partner and I excused ourselves from the gravesite and we're walking back to our vehicles, I told him, I said, you know what? I said, Martha loved rock, but she also loved Sade. And I said, we kind of shared that same bond, because I like Sade and she liked Sade. So um, I said, that's kind of where we met in the middle when it came to music, was Sade. And no sooner than I said that, I get in my car and turn the car on, a Sade song comes on.
Oh, wow,
Uh,
man.
it was Kiss of Life was the name of the song. And so I don't know if that was one of her favorites. And then probably about a couple days after, I'm thinking about her. And I go into Starbucks, get my coffee, and I come back out. And like I said, it's not on my playlist, but the Doors, Riders in the Storm, come on, and like I said,
Wow.
that's her favorite band. So I knew she was talking to me,
Yeah.
letting me know that she's okay. So
That's awesome,
and
man.
but it's funny, that this is real, because it really hit me hard, because I said, she's literally talking to me. Nobody can convince me. I know she's talking to me.
Yeah.
So I think that like I said, I'm so new to this. I'm connecting the dots as we go. So um, I'm very interested to see what's to come, what's going to happen. Um, and interesting enough, when I went through my DUI, and that was when I started this whole spiritual path, eventually leading into the podcast and eventually writing the book. There was, like I said, going back to synchronicity. Don't know how I found it. It just kind of fell into my lap, but I watched a lot of YouTube. And so it was a two-part miniseries about Shirley MacLaine. It was called a made-for-TV movie from her book adaptation called Out on a Limb. So if you want to check it out, it's a two-part. It's called, you type in Out on a Limb, Shirley MacLaine. There'll be a first and a second part. But that fell into my lap, and when I watched it, it's all about her going through this spiritual awakening at 40. And uh, she goes to Peru to look for aliens. Like, she's on this whole like adventure. This is a real story. This is actual real events that happened to her, and she's telling it and playing herself in this made for TV movie. And there's, like I said, there's also a book. It's called Out on a Limb, but they made it into a movie. But that really was the film that got me into gear of putting this podcast together while I was going through my whole probation period, DUI, um, because I was like, because I had that thought about synchronicity. I had that thought about how everything is happening as it should. There are no accidents. And the minute I watched that movie, that was one of the first things that they talked about was synchronicity. There are no accidents. And I said,
It all
now
clicked.
that's trippy. Was just, and I found that to be a routine with me now that I've become spiritually awakened, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you call it spiritual or just on this spiritual journey, I guess, not spiritually awakened, but spiritual journey. Is that when I started to listening or found Dolores Cannon, I remember I kind of made up my own um, synopsis, I guess, on how life works. Like I told you earlier about how we choose our life. Why would we choose this life? But if you know that you're going to go home at the end of the day to, blissfulness, then why wouldn't you pick a life of struggle? Much like when you watch a movie that makes you cry. Why did I do this to myself? Because you wanted the experience. It's kind of like when you play games as a kid. I'm sure you've played house where you were rich. I'm sure you played house being like, oh, we're poor, we're about to get kicked out, and you but at the end of the day, you go home, so everything's good. So I don't think that we should stress as much as we do, because I look back on a lot of things in life and I think I stressed over nothing, because guess what? I'm still right here. I'm still blessed to have heat, AC, running water, my house, my partner, my home, my dogs, my cat, my mother, friends, people like you, everybody, because this is really what life is about, is the experience. And so when I started putting my own hypothesis together on how I think all this works, like I shared earlier, I found Dolores Cannon, and it was like every time I figure out something, I listen to something that actually validates what I already figured up on my own. So it's kind of cool to know that you came up with this, but yet it was already out there, So
That
it
is
lets
cool,
me
man.
know I'm on the right track. It's almost like clarity.
Yeah. It's awesome, man. Well, it sounds like in a way you're just in the beginning of your journey, which is
Yeah,
really cool. And
yeah.
Bobby, I want to thank you so much for sharing your all your experiences, man. It's been awesome. Super
Oh, well,
interesting.
yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was likewise.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Will you keep
I
us
really,
posted if your friend comes back?
what's that?
And will you keep us posted if your friend comes back and you have more experiences? We'd love to know if anything else happens with that.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely keep you guys posted too. So,
But
but thank you again for having me. I'm always looking to get the word out there. I've been trying to get the word out as much as I can as possible about the podcast. I really think, even though we're living in crazy times, I think we're also getting to a point to where it's kind of like the tale of two cities. It's the best of times, but yet it's the worst of times, because I think we're all at this. Um, we're reaching this going from 3D to 5D now. We're at a higher vibration.
yeah,
Um, I think that technology, even though I've talked a lot of negative, um, put a lot of negative input on technology, but there's also a lot of positive in technology. It's bringing people together.
yeah,
It's bringing people together to critically think. Like, I have an idea, you have an idea, and then together maybe we come up with this conclusion, or this hypothesis on how things are supposed to operate or work. But in a lot of ways, technology is good. It's bringing us all together, and I think we're having more conversations, because you couldn't get this back in the 90s or even the early 2000s. So
yeah,
it's kind
man.
of cool that we have these apps and these abilities to put our message out there into the world.
Yeah, for sure,
So
man. Bobby, this has been absolutely awesome, brother. I appreciate you so much. Can you tell the
yeah.
listeners where they can find you and your show?
They can follow me on Instagram or even TikTok at Mystic Talk. Just look for the little tree of life icon. They can also take a listen to my podcast on Spotify. Unfortunately, that's the only platform you can listen to it on at this moment. Just type in Mystic Talk. Should be the first one that pops up.
Awesome, man. And we will share all your links in the show description. Bobby, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome. And keep us posted with what comes next.
All right. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you very much.